Forsooth, I am Sir Michael Bain, and Triggered, coming to you from the park-like expanse of the estate surrounding the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains and Dragon House Studio. And today's show is all about medieval concealed carry. And let me tell you, it took balls. Okay, kids, usually what you see on this show goes bang, makes a really loud noise, and leaves a really big hole. This is the future of modern weaponry. This is the future of concealed carry. And it all comes about thanks to Scott Folk. Now, you know Scott from Apex. However, Scott has a secret life. And his secret life involves really weird weapons. Scott, thanks for joining us on Triggered. When did you first notice the mental issues that you're dealing with now?
Oh, they've been around for a long time. I think since I become self-aware.
So what happened to get you to start this little side business of mayhem?
Well, basically, back in July of 2019, my daughter and I are sitting there watching some Disney movie. I'm on my phone scrolling through Facebook, and I saw a random thing pop up in the news about Arizona decriminalizing the possession and manufacture of nunchucks. And now I'm from California originally, where nothing is legal. And I just never even considered nunchucks or other things like that to be legal or illegal in Arizona, because Arizona is so much more of a free state. And then I saw that, I'm going, wait a minute, they were illegal? Not that I had any at that point, but I'm like, interesting. So I went ahead and I started poking around the internet a little bit and found out there were only 4 states where nunchucks were illegal up until that point. And I'm going, interesting. As of, I think, September 2019, our state decriminalized the manufacture, use, possession, all those things of nunchucks. I'm going, oh, cool. And like other people do, I thought to myself, hey, maybe somebody should, oh, wait, that somebody's me. Because anytime, in my opinion, anytime somebody says somebody should do something about that, that should be where that person speaking should just go, wait, that's going to be me. So I thought it'd be really cool to, like, hey, what if I created the Peoria nunchuck? No, not too specific. How about the Apex nunchuck? Nah, too apexy. Oh, Arizona Nunchuck Company. Really drive the fact that it's a state thing. It's from the state of Arizona that is now our new home. That's homed us. So I just figured, what the heck? Let's go for it.
That's really great. I mean, that's American entrepreneurship. You know, those of us who grew up in the time period of under the influence of Bruce Lee, I don't know a single person kind of moved in my group that didn't buy nunchucks and didn't leave huge bruises on themselves. You know, you spin them around, your elbow breaks, your knee breaks. After a while, you go like, I'm just going to leave this to Bruce Lee. How good are you at spinning your nunchucks?
I'm not. Too many factors, but I'll kind of flip around, play with them a little bit, but that is pretty much as far as I go. I actually been starting to watch some YouTube videos, tutorials on step-by-step how to good grips, little flips and spins, that kind of stuff. I'm just getting started into it though. This is really more of a, can I design a basic nunchuck that's simply manufactured and just make it and offer it for sale? So really my thing is not, and it's more can we produce something that's usable, and then I'll figure out how to use it myself.
Okay, you went from there. I mean, you know, you are a master at, you're master gunsmith, you're master at the machinery, the CNC type machinery, the things that you use to create gun parts. And when you went to a flail, what I have on my desk right now is the single most over-engineered flail on earth. I mean, this is, I could take this back to, I don't know, 1275, and I could get some really serious gold. I could probably get a bride, a castle, and some gold coins for this.
Sweet.
Tell me about the designing of this utterly ridiculous weapon.
Well, it started with the nunchuck. The handle you've got there is actually one of the stock nunchuck 9-inch handles. All the nunchuck handles have a threaded hole on the bottom. That's tapped half 28, and that intention was for future accessories. So when I came up with the idea of using the nunchuck handle for the things, I put the threaded hole in the bottom so I could attach, in this case, a grip stock, or whatever you call it, like a pommel, basically, so you can't flip it out of your hand. So that was that idea. The top section, right where you're holding now on camera, is the ball bearing section, and I wanted to come up with a very simple just a pivot that we basically a clevis that would go around a piece of chain that would be on a ball bearing, so it could freely spin as much as you want and never bind up the chain. So I just started looking around and found stock bearings that were whatever metric size they are, and started building the cap and chain stud around that, and then built the handle from there. So it's kind of like a reverse engineer. Like, here's a bearing that I want to use, and I'm going to design it backward to fit the parts I need to do.
And then here, interesting thing with flails. Flails are very popular in movies. They're very popular in cartoons. Apparently, they weren't all that popular in medieval times. There are lots of flails in museums, but there's not like any book of the peasant's guide to the flail. Although they're much mentioned that these were in fact peasant weapons. These were weapons used to take mounted or armored knights off horses, which, believe me, that could take you off a horse.
Yeah.
So you get the handle, you're working on the nunchuck handle, and you thought, well, balls. In fact, this looks uncannily like a COVID-19 molecule. I don't know if that was your intent, but what we're looking at here is a wicked, deadly virus. Talk about your balls.
Well, you see, Michael, my balls. Basically, the idea with that again was just to have something cool to be able to attach the end of the nunchuck handle. And so I just like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to make a morning star or a flail or something along that line. And so I just started kind of drawing up what I wanted. I bought those spikes are motorcycle windshield fairing spikes. Basically, they're designed to replace the bolts on your windshield and your motorcycle to put spikes on instead. I just came up with a different way to use them. And just started drawing up, okay, what can I use? My lathe will feed a max bar of 2.5 inch diameter. Well, I'm going to run a ball that's just under 2.5 inches. And started going from there. And of course, I implemented the design of the ball bearing system into the ball itself as well, so that you get a full pivot there. So again, if you smack something, it's going to rotate. Yeah, just like that. We do that all the time in the office, playing with them.
I'm thinking if you had about 20 of these in a big Christmas tree.
That'd be a pretty awesome Christmas tree. That'd be a little heavy duty of a Christmas tree, but yeah, it's doable. So, it was just kind of like, let's make some and see what happens. So I have 6 total balls currently. You have one of the 6. I didn't do any in blue, but whatever. I got 2 red,
I don't
2
blame
purple.
you. It would just be wrong. It would be
Right.
wrong.
So the color scheme was just for fun. Just the good contrast, red, black looks really cool. And of course, as you can see, the Apex colors are red and black primarily, so that they kind of fit together just to fit that theme. But it was just kind of a cool thing to set up. So you've got the first one outside of the house. I've got a few more that I'm going to put up for sale pretty soon here, and let people just go ahead and buy them. But basically, it's just a fun thing to add up.
Now, just we're laughing about nunchucks, right? Anybody who's spun nunchucks have hit themselves with them, right? If you spin this and hit yourself with it, you are going to be visiting an emergency room, and they're all closed now. So you're probably going to lie out front and bleed out just like a peasant in 1275.
I think that's probably an apt observation.
All right, you're a top competitor, top revolver competitor, top shooter. Do you think you should reach out to Mike Foley and suggest that we include some sort of use of a flail in USPSA scenarios?
At the very least, maybe nunchucks. But I can always try it, see what he says. I mean, he's kind of he's a guy who's along the same lines as you and I. Kind of hey, let's try that out. That'd be kind of fun. So sure, why not?
On a serious note, when you handle something like this, I've been lucky enough to go to most of the major arms museums in the world, and
Nice.
I've spent a lot of time in front of display cases looking at flails, two-handed flails, morning stars, which are staffs with a metal globe or a metal tube on top.
Mm-hmm.
And when you handle this, you realize what a medieval battle must have felt like.
Yeah.
You try to, because this is really heavy, and it is kids, honestly. This is not something you're going to give your 8-year-old,
Right.
But you do get a sense of what a medieval battle must have looked like, which is bloody and absolutely brutal. I've always said I would like to go back in time. If I could just have a window, I would just once like to see a castle be taken, because I think it would be but I don't want to be in the battle. I can appreciate telling you that.
Want to be
But,
flying a camera.
so as an aside, I know what you're doing here for fun. How are you at Apex? How are things? You know, Apex has made such a reputation for itself over the years. I mean, you have defined a niche, the niche of like go buy a gun and then get the Apex trigger and the Apex barrel to make it worth owning. How is Apex doing in the midst of this COVID lockdown?
We're doing pretty well. We're not dead in the water by any means. Fortunately, none of our employees have gotten sick or have even any symptoms. So that's great. We're a little bit slow. As a lot of our vendors are shut down or stalled. We have a few vendors still in California, like springs are still made by one of the companies in California we used to deal with because they're really good at just making springs. They shut down and they had orders literally on the shelf to ship the next day when they got the shutdown order. So it really slowed down sales for us. It kind of killed us for stock, and spinning up a new spring at a new spring manufacturer, getting samples in to be able to test and verify, it takes 3 or 4 months to go through that whole process to really get them where we're happy. So we had to just wait until they're able to ship us parts. But all in all, we've been doing pretty well. Our employees seem to be really happy to have jobs. We're able to continue servicing our customers best we can. We have some local law enforcement who use us for upper echelon armory type work as a backup when their armorers need help. So we've been able to take care of those guys as needed. So I'd say it's been pretty good.
And just kind of one other general question: you as a both you and Maddie are top revolver competitors. Just quickly, your thoughts on the kind of revival and regrowth of revolvers that we're seeing. Revolvers, they do run in cycles, not just around and around the cylinder, but periodically people say we don't ever want to see a revolver again, and we're now going through another one of those strange renaissance. Any sense from you as a revolver competitor why revolvers come back around, so to speak?
Well, they always go back around, pull the trigger enough times. I'm not really sure. I think it may have to do with people getting bored of the autos. I think they feel like, oh, I've gotten good at this or that auto, and okay, they're all kind of the same. Hey, what's this cool thing these guys are doing? Because I'm personally, Maddie loves to sit there and just laugh when we go out to the range. We see these guys running what I call Gucci open guns, where they've got the Glock with all the stuff bolted on and the paint jobs and all the crazy stuff. They got the appendix holster and you name it, right? And they go out there and they burn a 20-round magazine and hit 5 targets. I'm like, wow, great. And they walk, and literally I'm walking up to the line and they walk away and they're laughing. Yeah, look, he's got a revolver. And I walk up and I just smoke the stage. And they're like, whoa. I think there's some of that happens here and there of watching, seeing somebody like, wow, that person can shoot a revolver. And then they want to give it a shot. They want a challenge. I think people like to be challenged, especially with Ruger jumping up on with their 9mm revolver now and all the other stuff that's been coming. It's just kind of like a rollout of more revolvers available. And I think the customers, the shooters, new or historical shooters are looking at it going, I should go try that out. Because everybody tells you that a revolver never jams and a revolver is more accurate than an auto. That's the thing that's always been said to me. And you ups and downs on both sides of that, of course, but ultimately I think people want to find out for themselves. I have a safe full autos. Hey, let's get one of those wheel gun things. Let's give this a shot. Fun. That's why I shoot them. I have a great time with them. I love it. And I love to show people that an 8-shot revolver can still be the guy running a 20-round magazine.
I think that's great. Go ahead. We're about 15 minutes here, probably wrap it up. I just want to show you one more time, guys. You need a flail. Let's be honest. You got a Glock, you got a 1911, you got a revolver, and you finally decide, I need a weapon I can depend on. And I think a flail from Arizona Nunchuck is going to do you a great job. Scott, thank you. Thank you for your bizarre sense of weaponry. And where can they find a flail or Arizona Nunchucks? How do they reach you?
Right now, all of the Arizona Nunchuck components are all on Apex Tactical's website. We just revamped the website last week. We had a major outage because our server vendor totally dropped the ball. So we got to a whole new server. Our whole new site had to be frontlined. We put 6 weeks of work into like 8 days. And all of a sudden, we have a new website. So there's some tweaks being made, but apextactical.com does have an Arizona Nunchuck section where you can find the stuff that's for sale currently.
Okay, and I'm looking forward to one of these with a compensator. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that's coming
there's this
soon.
coming out too. The ball, the spike, no
So, I
spikes.
mean, are you going to start making armor as well?
We could. The problem with armor is you got to size it to people.
All right, Scott. I know now you're thinking about this. Armor, a little bit of elastic. I mean, one size fits all. Scott Folk, Apex Tactical, Arizona Nunchuck, thank you very much for joining us here on Triggered. And really, get back to your machines.
You got it. Thanks, Michael.
So, like that, you know this is what your spouse wants for Christmas. Continuing on with our medieval concealed carry theme, when we come back from commercials, we are going to spend a little time with big swords. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Ammo Man. What's in your ammo can? Tandem Cross, making good guns even better. Lipsies and their wonderful Guns of the Month. Lucid Optics, on target, under budget. And Franklin Armory, creating some of the most innovative guns in America. Well, we're back, and you'll notice there isn't a gun on the table, but there's a very different and specific weapon on the table. You may remember I talked about over a year ago, year and a half, 2 years ago, that after my trip to Scotland, I commissioned a sword. And I guess using the proper English terms is I bespoke a sword to be built for me by Castle Keep, Rob Miller, who is essentially the last true sword maker in Scotland, which was at one time one of the greatest blade cultures on earth. On Skye, he has a small forge. He forges the blades, he etches the blades, he sharpens the blades, he creates the scabbards, he wraps them. This is sharp. This is my sword. And this is the sword that I spent months and months designing and back and forth with Rob on how this sword should be. It's basically modeled on a German hand-and-a-half sword, which I decided, I thought about Scottish claymores, the classic basket hilt Scottish claymores, or the two-handed Wallace swords, the great war swords of the clans. But I wanted something different. So Rob and I talked back and forth, and we finally decided on this hand-and-a-half sword. Again, a sword that you might see in Germany. And for a long time, they ruled. If you happen to be a fan of Game of Thrones, the sword that Jon Snow carries, the wolf's head sword, that is essentially a hand-and-a-half sword like this. So basically, this blade was hammered out, forged, heat treated. It's engraved, you can't read it here because it's upside down, but it's engraved, it said, "Look life in its iron face." That is a quote from Charlotte Bronte, by the way, probably the least likely quote one would ever put on a sword blade. But we specified each part of it. We talked about the different lengths. I talked about how I wanted here, the hilt. I wanted twisted iron there, the forging. Again, having seen a lot of hand-and-a-half swords in the Wallace collection in London, and in the Queen's Own collection there in England, one of the things I saw was very common was this twisted iron type hilt. It was a very common choice then. And leather wrapped and then wire wrapped on the hilt, called a hand-and-a-half because if you have a hand like Conan, it can be wielded with one hand, or it can be wielded with both hands. If you look back here in the pommel in the end, you will see, try to keep from cutting myself here, Rob, because Rob is meticulous on things, Rob cast a silver coin. And then after, it's actually 2 silver coins, one for either side of the pommel. And after he cast those silver coins, he enameled them. That is a Templar's cross. Of course, most of you are familiar with the Knights Templar. I think there's even a series on now on the Knights Templar. They ruled the roost for a long time, and they unfortunately trusted the people that employed them. Never a good thing to do. So I've waited a long time for this sword. Interesting, even on the sheath here, the scabbard, it's made out of alder wood. Once again, Rob makes that. Finds the alder wood, carves it out for the scabbard, and then covers it in lambskin that he sources locally. It's an interesting point. Rob lives way out on the Isle of Skye, this little bitty tiny town on the water. It's beautiful. And the weather there is horrific most of the year, which is why Rob spends a lot of time making swords. And to drive there, I called him up. We were on the Isle of Skye, and I said, I'm in the neighborhood, can I drop in? He goes, mate, nobody's ever in the neighborhood. Fascinating guy. Runs a bed and breakfast with his wife, who's a professor, takes up organic gardening, is a beekeeper, and plays bass in a heavy metal band that tours the world and makes these amazing swords. Many of these swords are in museums as copies of famous swords. So I couldn't help but order this sword. I think it's beautiful. I think it is a magnificent weapon, and you know, kind of in a lot of the ways we talk about things now, where on guns, where people say, "Wow, you know, the purpose of that thing was to kill." You know what the purpose of this sword is? To kill. It's made to kill. And Rob is adamant that you could fight this sword as you could fight any sword that was made. I've seen him test his blades. Takes his blades, puts them in the vise, and you might have seen this on Forged in Fire. Goes all the way here, goes all the way there. The blade can't break. Interestingly enough, my ancestry, Scott, we've talked about this before, this plaid, this is my kilt, by the way, and if you look at the actual pattern of the plaid, you can clearly see that my ancestors, when they designed this, were deeply, deeply, deeply into the Talisker single malt, because who would design anything like this? But it was a great trip for me in that years and years ago, I promised a relative that she had studied the family, and she goes, I can't find how we got to the New World. I can trace us to North Carolina in the mid-1700s. I don't understand how we got there. And she goes, one of these days I'd like for you to find out. So I did. What I found out in the great book of clans, where they chronicled what happened to the clans after Culloden Moor, the Battle of Culloden Moor, and the scouring of the Highlands, which, by the way, if you read the Lord of the Rings books, Tolkien based the scouring of the Shire on the scouring of the Highlands. I found a small notation, essentially a receipt, and it said 60 Banes were caught, indentured, and sent to North Carolina. So, from my aunt, I found where we came from. This, by the way, behind me is a picture. There's a Bane memorial, a clan memorial. It sits in a field, appropriately, amid a lot of animal poop. But it overlooks Loch Ness. It's a beautiful spot. You go up a long dirt road, lots and lots of sheep in the way, and all it says was Clan MacBain and its septs, which Bane was one of the septs, once owned this land. Those funny looking things, that's the cat, because the slogan is touch not the cat without a targe, which is a shield. So anyway, this is my bespoke sword, and it will hang in a great place of honor. And you know what? You never know. Maybe this piece of steel's time has come again.